Okay, 2 Kings chapter 14. Have you ever sought the blessing of God, received the blessing of God, and then promptly forgotten that it all came from God? It's obvious when other people do it, but we do it ourselves, don't we? You know, we get near the end of this journey of kings, and we are getting near the end. I know you're glad for that. I am too. It's a repeating theme in these. We got 2 kings we're going to look at tonight, one in Judah, one in Israel. And then next week is like, I can't remember how many kings are in chapter 15, but there's a bunch of them. And they're all horrible. So that's why they just get a little blurb, a little bit of shout out. We've got some interesting lessons in these 2 tonight that are very, very important and I think immediately applicable to the governing authorities in our world, but also to us. So we'll take a look at Amaziah and Jeroboam II. And the first one is Amaziah, king of Judah, starting in verses 1 and 2. In the second year of Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, king of Israel, Amaziah, son of Joash, king of Judah, began to reign. He was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 29 years. His mother's name was Jehoaddan, and she was from Jerusalem. He started reigning when he was 25. I mean, think about that a minute. Don't think back when you were a 25-year-old, okay? Because we were all mature for our age, right?
Well, I have a grandson who's 25.
Yeah, that's what we should all be thinking. Think about a 25-year-old you know right now and say, Your Highness. Can you visualize that?
He'd like that.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. So he reigned in Judah for 29 years, and just to put it in another biblical context, this is probably the time of the prophet Joel. If you've studied that book, that'll mean something to you. If you haven't, now you got some homework. Go read the book of Joel, and you'll understand that God was not real happy with what was happening in Israel. Of course, we're in Judah right now, and Joel is going to minister in Judah. But for him, we have some good, some bad, and some ugly for Amaziah. So let's talk about first of all, his faith. And it starts out on such a high note because we've had so many low notes in these kings. This is decidedly a high note. Verse 3, he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. That's great, isn't it? Let's just stop right there and call it a night. Well, it says, but not as his father David had done. David made mistakes, but David did a lot of good. So Amaziah did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, but not as his father David had done. In everything he followed the example of his father Joash. Joash was not a great example. He was a good example, but not a great one. Verse 4, the high places, however, were not removed. The people continued to offer sacrifices and burn incense there. Now, we're not talking about the sin of Jeroboam. That was up in the north. We're talking about down in the south in Judah. These are the high places where they were still worshiping other gods. Some kings would come in and tear them down. Most would leave them. And this was an abomination. And God's not happy about that. He's happy that as far as Amaziah's faith is concerned, that his heart is for the Lord, but his faithfulness in all things is not quite there. Verse 5, after the kingdom was firmly in his grasp, he executed the officials who had murdered his father, the king. Now, this is a normal thing in any ancient Near East culture. This is standard operating procedure. They do the same thing today, but they just fire them. You know, a new president comes in, you fire everybody that was there before you because he worked for the other guy. They don't kill him. But back in the day, you'd kill them because you didn't want them to have entrenched power where they could usurp your authority. Now, most common in the ancient Near East, I say ancient Near East culture, I'm talking about not just Israel and Judah, but the surrounding nations, Aram and Transjordan and all these areas, all the way down to Egypt. The normal thing when a new king would come in, you'd kill all the previous officials and their families. All right, that was pretty standard operating procedure. But Amaziah didn't do that. Verse 6, yet he did not put the children of the assassins to death in accordance with what is written in the book of the law of Moses, where the Lord commanded parents are not to be put to death for their children, nor children put to death for their parents, and each will die for their own sins. So it's pretty much a direct quote out of Deuteronomy 24:16. And so this was considered a good act. All right, he took care of the people that killed his father, but he didn't take care of their families. He didn't wipe out their families for their act. So in that sense, he is trying to obey the law of Moses and not holding the sins of the father against the children. So this is considered kind of a highlight of his morality. And that's about where it's going to end. Okay, so we're going to move forward. We'll talk about his wars. And this gets really interesting, I believe. I think you'll find it interesting as well. Verse 7. He was the one who defeated 10,000 Edomites in the Valley of Salt and captured Selah in battle, calling it Joktheel, the name it has to this day. This is a big deal. It's not something that really hits our radar, but I want to explain why this is a big deal. Remember, the Edomites, this is south. We're talking about the region south of, I've got a map. There we go. Talking about the region south of the Dead Sea. This is a critical trading route. And the Judahites, those in Judah, had been leveraging taxes and putting the thumb down on the Edomites and subjugating them for a long time. But the Edomites have revolted, and the Edomites got away with it for a long time, especially when there were weak kings in Judah. Edomites did what they wanted to do. And so we have this little footnote here that says he was the one who defeated 10,000 Edomites in the Valley of Salt and captured Selah in battle, calling it Joktheel. These are actually places and I'll show you here in just a second. So the Valley of Salt is just south of the Dead Sea. And you can guess why it's called that, because as the water of the Dead Sea evaporates, it leaves behind tremendous deposits of salt. You can literally walk along the seashore, pick up massive chunks. There's boulders of pure salt. And it's an incredible place to be. And of course, south of that, as waters have receded, it is the Valley of Salt. Now, because Edom had revolted, they lost those trade routes. And so Amaziah is going to come in for the prosperity of Judah, and he's going to come after them, and he's going to make war. Now, I said these places, we just know them by different names. And we have this verse that says, Valley of Salt captured Selah. Oh, but nowadays, when the writer's writing, it's called Joktheel. Today it has a different name, and you'll probably recognize it. It's called Petra. You've seen Petra, the rock city. Petra meaning rock. It's actually a city carved out in the stone by the Edomites. And of course, this is the most famous part of it. This is the treasury. This is the Indiana Jones place. It actually doesn't go deep back in there. This is more just for looking at, and it was the treasury for a time. But they carved into, you can even see a stadium there, and you can see other houses and structures there. Carving into the stone was something that they did in this area, called Selah, called Joktheel, called Petra, is the area that Amaziah conquered to open up those trade routes. Now I want to step out of 2 Kings for just a minute and run over to 2 Chronicles, and it's a long passage, but I want to read it because it's a great story, and you start to see the chinks in Amaziah's armor. So we're going to read 2 Chronicles 25, 5 through 16. Amaziah called the people of Judah together and assigned them according to their families to commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds for all Judah and Benjamin. He then mustered those 20 years old or more and found that they were 300,000 men fit for military service, able to handle the spear and shield. He also hired 100,000 fighting men from Israel for 100 talents of silver. But a man of God came to him, that would be a prophet, we just don't know which one. A man of God came to him and said, Your Majesty, these troops from Israel must not march with you, for the Lord is not with Israel, not with any of the people of Ephraim. Even if you go and fight courageously in battle, God will overthrow you before the enemy, for God has the power to help or overthrow. Amaziah asked the man of God, But what about the 100 talents I paid for the Israelite troops? The man of God replied, The Lord can give you much more than that. Interesting, right? So I already spent the money. Who cares if God's mad at us? I spent the money. Don't worry, God can repay you. Just let them go. Verse 10, so Amaziah dismissed the troops who had come to him from Ephraim and sent them home. They were furious with Judah and left for home in a great rage. And I thought about that. Why were they furious? They got paid in silver, but they didn't get any bounty. There's no booty, which you would get in a victorious battle. There's your daily wage is nothing compared to what you're going to walk home with. So they were mad because they're not going to take home any, and this was going to be a slam dunk because it's a huge army that he's assembled. Amaziah, verse 11, then marshaled his strength and led his army to the Valley of Salt, where he killed 10,000 men of Seir. And that's the reference that we had back in 2 Kings. The army of Judah also captured 10,000 men alive, took them to the top of a cliff, and threw them down so they were all dashed to pieces. Meanwhile, the troops that Amaziah had sent back and had not allowed to take part in the war raided towns belonging to Judah from Samaria to Beth Horon. They killed 3,000 people and carried off great quantities of plunder. Well, there you go. The prophet was right? These were not trustworthy men. Verse 14, when Amaziah returned from slaughtering the Edomites, he brought back the gods of the people of Seir. He set them up as his own gods, bowed down to them, and burned sacrifices to them. The anger of the Lord burned against Amaziah, and he sent a prophet to him who said, why do you consult this people's gods, which could not save their own people from your hand? While he was still speaking, the king said to him, have we appointed you as an advisor of the king? Stop. Why be struck down? So the prophet stopped, but said, I know that God is determined to destroy you because you have done this and have not listened to my counsel. So it's a very telling glimpse in that battle. God gave him the victory, and then he got really confident. In fact, I would say cocky, arrogant about getting the victory that came from God. And now he's collecting idols, which makes no sense. Even if you believed in the power of those idols, they lost. They lost. I mean, it's like putting the decal of the football team that just lost the World Series on your car. No, you know, hang your head in shame for at least a few months, then you can reclaim them as your own, but not right after you lose. You don't set them up. Sorry, Robert. It's been enough time. It's a new season, right? So Amaziah, you know, he did that which was right in the eyes of the Lord, but he didn't keep doing right, and this is unfortunate. All right, back to 2 Kings, verse 8, 14 verse 8. Then Amaziah sent messengers to Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, the son of Jehu, king of Israel, with the challenge, come, let us face each other in battle. And what's going on there? Well, he just had a victory over the Edomites. So I just took down the Edomites, might as well just take down the Israelites. Verse 9, but Jehoash, king of Israel, replied to Amaziah, king of Judah, a thistle in Lebanon sent a message to a cedar in Lebanon. Give your daughter to my son in marriage. Then a wild beast in Lebanon came along and trampled the thistle underfoot. This is ancient smack talk, and it's actually really good. It's really poetic. You know, a thistle, just a little nothing, says to the mighty cedar, hey, let's come out, let's meet for battle. And then the thistle gets trampled underfoot by a wild beast, not even by the cedar. So he's taunting him. He says, you do not have the strength to come at me. And Jehoash was absolutely right. Judah did not have the strength. Israel had been doing battle against the Ammonites, against Syria and the north. They've been doing battle against the Assyrians. They've been facing much tougher enemies, and Judah would not be up for it. Verse 10, you have indeed defeated Edom, and now you are arrogant. Give glory in your victory, but stay home. Why ask for trouble and cause your own downfall, and that of Judah also? Amaziah, however, would not listen, so Jehoash, king of Israel, attacked. He and Amaziah, king of Judah, faced each other at Beth-Shemesh in Judah. Judah was routed by Israel, and every man fled to his home. Jehoash, king of Israel, captured Amaziah, king of Judah, the son of Joash, the son of Ahaziah, at Beth-Shemesh. Then Jehoash went to Jerusalem and broke down the wall of Jerusalem from the Ephraim gate to the corner gate, a section about 400 cubits long. He took all the gold and silver and all the articles found in the temple of the Lord and in the treasuries of the royal palace. He also took hostages and returned to Samaria. So you see where his, some would call it hubris, it's just arrogance, that God gave him a victory, And then he assumed that he was the reason he was victorious, and he reached too far. He thought he could walk, with the sun, and he's melting, right? Amaziah's pride was definitely the beginning of the end for him. Now, he's in captivity for time, and this is going to get glossed over in the text. And so his son is actually going to begin to reign from Judah while the father is in captivity. We call this a co-regency. And a co-regency can happen when both of them are there. One's handing the baton to the other one, or if one is in exile or one is in captivity and another one starts to reign. That's the case. Really, his son is in charge. He's calling the shots, but his father's still alive. Amaziah is still alive, even though he's captive. But he's still considered king. So it's a time of co-regencies, and that makes dating these things difficult sometimes when you fail to recognize the overlap. But there's definitely an overlap there. But this is an aerial shot of modern Bet Shemesh. This is just the part that's been excavated. If you can see the other ridges, kind of the lines underneath the turf, this was actually a very huge city, and it's never been fully excavated. Maybe someday it will be, but this is where this went down and where he lost his freedom. Now, this section will end with talking about the deaths of Jehoash and Amaziah. Now, if you're thinking, didn't we just talk about the death of Jehoash? We did in the last chapter. This is kind of a recap. The author thought it relevant given the fact that Amaziah was taken captive, and so we get kind of a double dose here, starting in verse 15 through 22. As for the other events of the reign of Jehoash, what he did and his achievements, including his war against Amaziah, king of Judah, are they not written in the book of the annals of the king of Israel? Jehoash rested with his ancestors and was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel, and Jeroboam, his son, succeeded him as king. Amaziah, son of Joash, king of Judah, lived for 15 years after the death of Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, and king of Israel. As for the other events of Amaziah's reign, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? They conspired against him in Jerusalem, and he fled to Lachish, but they sent men after him to Lachish and killed him there. Now, this is after his release. Men conspire against him. Why? Because Amaziah has led to the loss of power and respect and dignity in Judah. And so there is a tiny coup mentioned here in just a few verses. Verse 20, he was brought back by horse and was buried in Jerusalem with his ancestors in the city of David. Then all the people of Judah took Azariah, who was 16 years old, and made him king in the place of his father Amaziah. So we had a 25-year-old who reigned for 29 years, and then a 16-year-old takes over for him. Now, we get a footnote here, and we're going to get into him in the future. But it says, Amaziah, was the one who rebuilt Elath and restored it to Judah after Amaziah rested with his ancestors. So we have this mention of this conspiracy and the assassination, but it doesn't really go into detail. And it's mainly because Amaziah's life has become an example of somebody who once followed God, took the blessings for granted, filled with pride, thought he could do what he wanted to do, and that led to his downfall. And so his story gets truncated at that point. And then we're going to shift gears. Now, we were down in Judah. We look back up to who was just mentioned in the text, Jeroboam, or here we know him now as Jeroboam II, as the king of Israel. Verse 23, in the 15th year of Amaziah, son of Joash, king of Judah, Jeroboam, son of Jehoash, king of Israel, became king in Samaria, and he reigned 41 years. Now, his reign, Jeroboam II's reign, he's a significant fellow. This is the longest in Israel's history. So this king reigned the longest. It's to be about 793 to 753 BC. So the first 12 years, he's a co-regent. His father is still king, and he's picking up where his father left off. And so he starts his reign when Joash was king of Judah, and it continues to Amaziah, who we just saw, and then it continues on into Azariah, which is Amaziah's son. Okay. There'll be a test later on all that. Why is it significant? Well, long reigns tend to get more done. If you can stay in office longer, you tend to have more significant things. But notice Jeroboam II, he had the longest reign in Israel, but watch how it gets glossed over. And to understand why, you just got to look at the next verse 24. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he had caused Israel to commit. That tag has been labeled on every single king of Israel because they continued to have the golden calves at Dan and Bethel, and they didn't tear them down. But like we talked about did we talk about it last week, or maybe we talked about it a few months ago before we left, they didn't really have a choice. This was their power. Once Israel and Judah split, the center of worship in Jerusalem, in Solomon's temple, is in Judah. So for Israel to be independent and not be a vassal state to Judah, they have to have their own temple. They have to have their own means of worship, and that's what Jeroboam did. He set up the golden calves at Dan and Bethel, and he created a priesthood. Anybody can be a priest. And that continued. You know, a courageous king, what would he have to do to change that? Well, he'd have to reunite with Judah, because the worship has got to be in Israel, for the Jew anyway. So he did that. He did evil, did not turn away. Verse 25 says, he was the one who restored the boundaries of Israel from Lebo Hamath to the Dead Sea in accordance with the word of the Lord, the God of Israel, spoken through his servant Jonah of Amittai, the prophet from Gath Hepher. And yes, it's that Jonah. And it's been a long time of shrinking. Jeroboam II, in his 41 evil years, he is able to stretch the boundaries of Israel back to just about the Solomonic range. Now remember, Solomon had the United Kingdom, so Solomon had Judah down here also. But as far as just Israel is concerned, Jeroboam II gets it back to the Solomonic scope. So that's really impressive, considering he's doing it without the blessing of God. Or is he? While we're talking about Jonah, other prophets were in Israel at this time. Now think about this. Guy's on the throne 41 years. He does that which is evil. What happens when an evil guy rules for a long time? God speaks. So we have Jonah, we have Hosea, we have Amos, at least those three. And then maybe some that were named but didn't write books. But those three book writers were in Israel, calling out the sins that Israel was committing, the sins of Jeroboam. But still, God blesses. Look at verse 26. The Lord had seen how bitterly everyone in Israel, whether slave or free, was suffering, and there was no one there to help him. And since the Lord had not said he would blot out the name of Israel from under heaven, he saved them by the hand of Jeroboam, son of Jehoash. So the expansion of the nation wasn't because he was righteous or good. It was only because God had mercy to keep Israel as a nation, that they wouldn't be extinguished. And I've talked about this before, and there's plenty of people that disagree with me on this, but I believe Israel has a place. And this is exactly the kind of argument that you're going to look for. Israel is chosen by God for a purpose, not because Israel is good. That's never the rationale. To align yourself with Israel as a nation is not because of her righteousness, but because of her chosenness. And that's all. That is the only reason. Israel at this time had swelled back to the borders of Solomon under a wicked king. If you'd have lived there that day, you said, are you a friend of Israel? I said, kind of have to be, but man, that king, Jeroboam II, what a sleazebag. Why doesn't he worship in Jerusalem like he's supposed to? He did that which was evil in the eyes of the Lord. But look what God's judgment on this, God's judgment. And since the Lord had not said he would blot out the name of Israel from under heaven. Now, God had not said that up until this time, right? So if we go from 2 Kings chapter 14 and we go back in history, God never said before that he would blot out the name of Israel. But what about after that? Still never said it. Trick question. He never says that. In fact, when you go to the very end, you'll see a place in the end for a national Israel. Now, when I say that, I know some people bristle because they take that as an endorsement of everything that current national Israel is doing. No, listen to me. I side with Israel because God has chosen them, and that's the only reason. Not as an endorsement for anything they've done, good, bad, or indifferent. Period. You could equate it, this is a horrible illustration, but you could equate it kind of to a form of patriotism. You know, you're proud of your country. You know, I love to see Ticos that are proud of their country. Isn't that fun when you meet one that's just, you know, Costa Rica the best, or the Switzerland of Central America, or whatever, you know, and they're just proud of it. You know, and they got their Gallo Pinto and their toucan on the shoulder and walking in the beach, you know, carrying a sloth, you know, and they're just, and they got a Diki sphere in their yard, and they're just, you know, they're proud of their country. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Does that mean everything that happens in Costa Rica is good? No. There's some horrible things happening in Costa Rica. But this thing to side with a nation here in this sense isn't because you're born there. It's because, well, God has a plan. So when I say I'm pro-Israel, it doesn't mean I'm pro everything they do. It means, oh, God's got a future for them. And there is a blessing that comes with being on the right side of that equation. And that goes back to the Abrahamic covenant. I'll spare you that. If you don't believe me, go back, read the Abrahamic covenant. It appears several times in the book of Genesis, starting in Genesis chapter 12. Okay, enough said on that. Beat that horse, nobody wants to ride it. Okay. Lord said he would not blot out. Verse 28, as for the other events of Jeroboam's reign, all he did, and his military achievements, including how he recovered for Israel both Damascus and Hamath, which had belonged to Judah, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? Jeroboam rested with his ancestors, the kings of Israel, and Zechariah his son succeeded him as king. Now this final epithet, because again he's a wicked king and he's not being lifted up, he's not being exalted, but he was powerful, and God used him to do what God wanted to do. What did God want to do? Preserve Israel. So let me say it again. God used a wicked man to preserve a nation that he had chosen. So don't let anybody play God. If you want to be a supporter of Israel, don't let anybody play gotcha with, well, look at all the wicked people that have supported Israel. That doesn't mean anything. I got a whole Bible full of them. I can one-up you. Okay. It's about recognizing that God has chosen. Who else has God chosen? Us. The church. Peter says you're a royal priesthood, a peculiar people, a chosen people. We're chosen. Before the foundation of the world, we are chosen. Does that mean everything we do is right? Does that mean everybody who calls himself a Christian, you want to put your stamp of approval on them? No, hardly, right? I hate it when people attack Christianity by pointing out what a Christian did. If you want to attack Christianity, do it honestly. Look at Jesus. Go to the source. If you want to attack Christianity, attack Jesus. Okay? And if he succumbs to your attacks, then, okay, you win. All right? But he is what Christianity is, not any errant follower. Right? So, yet the church is chosen. It's called the bride of Christ. Theologically, I believe the next event that's going to happen, the return of the Lord, will be the marriage supper of the Lamb. This is the uniting of the bride, that is the church, with Christ. It's an image of us finally being at peace because we're united with him. Which means right now we're what? Well, we're not. But we will be. That's called being chosen. You ever see a bride walking around? I mean, she got a wedding date and everything. I don't know what happens to brides, but they change. As soon as they got a wedding date, they're a little taller, a little bossier, a little more selective. Out comes a notebook that they designed when they were 14 of how their wedding's going to go, and they got all these ideas. Why is that? Well, because they're chosen. And they got a plan, and they got something to look forward to. Well, so are we. We are the bride of Christ. That's something to cherish, isn't it? We are chosen. I don't know, maybe it's the pain medicine kicking in, but I think it's awesome. All right, that's about all I got to say about that. Let us pray. Father, thank you so much, Lord, for choosing us. Thank you for choosing Israel. Lord, she has been an example of unfaithfulness, and yet you have continued to do great and mighty things. The greatest of which was to bring forth a Savior, Jesus Christ, son of Abraham, son of David. And we're grateful for that. We could not be here without that. So Lord, may we be wise in recognizing your working in history and in humanity, that you work with sinful people all the time, including us, and we're so grateful for that. But Lord, may we strive to do better. May we try to live lives that are more like King David in the right way. Live lives that are right in the eyes of the Lord. And so bring you glory in that regard. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.